How do you deal with that as a family?
Well, we don't, in many respects, need to deal with it.
Princess Anne had spent a lifetime defending royal protocol without hesitation, apology, or compromise. But during one of the most carefully controlled ceremonies in the royal calendar, Queen Camilla issued an instruction that directly overturned Anne's authority. The Princess Royal did not quietly step aside. She stopped the proceedings, confronted the Queen Consort before stunned senior aides, and made it clear that one of them had crossed a line the monarchy could not afford to ignore. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Camilla sat at the head of the table and delivered the order. During the final planning meeting for a state reception at Windsor Castle, she directed that Anne's ceremonial position be moved behind senior guests. A state reception is a royal gathering welcoming national or foreign figures. The Queen also instructed that control of the royal procession, the fixed order in which senior figures enter and move through a ceremony, should pass to her private office. Anne understood why the change mattered. For years, she had helped enforce ceremonial order during engagements involving military representatives, foreign dignitaries, and branches of the family. That responsibility was never merely about who walked first. It protected the monarchy from confusion, rivalry, and the appearance that personal preference could overrule duty. The room changed when Anne pushed back her chair. She placed both hands on the table and asked Camilla to repeat the instruction. Her voice stayed low, yet every aide heard the anger beneath it. The Queen repeated that future protocol decisions affecting her position would pass through her office. She did not raise her voice. That refusal made the challenge feel sharper. Two competing plans now existed with less than 48 hours remaining. Senior staff exchanged uneasy looks, knowing that following Anne's version could offend the monarch's wife, while accepting Camilla's order could weaken the system they were expected to protect. No one wanted to move. No one wanted to choose. Anne closed the folder and slid it across the table. She declared that she would not take part in a ceremony shaped by improvised hierarchy. Camilla watched her rise, then warned that leaving would be treated as defiance. The princess stopped at the door but did not turn. She answered that protocol existed precisely to stop personal ambition from becoming royal command. Charles received both accounts before evening. The king now faced a choice between his wife and his sister, but the deeper danger lay beneath that decision. Before he could judge either woman, the palace had to confront what each believed she was truly protecting. To outsiders, the conflict appeared to concern a procession order and a seating plan. Inside the family, it carried the weight of decades. Princess Anne saw herself as the guardian of standards inherited from Queen Elizabeth II. Camilla saw a royal system that had accepted her title, but continued to question her authority. Neither woman believed she was fighting for personal pride. That conviction made the dispute far more dangerous, because compromise now felt like betrayal. Anne had built her reputation through discipline, service, and respect for procedure. The Princess Royal, a title given to the monarch's eldest daughter, treated ceremonial rules as safeguards against rivalry. She believed those rules mattered because a change could make the crown appear driven by family pressure rather than duty. Camilla carried a wound. The Queen Consort, meaning the wife of the reigning king, had spent years facing suspicion and comparison. Beside Charles, she believed her office could not remain dependent on relatives who treated her authority as conditional. To her, the disputed order was not an adjustment. It was proof that acceptance could vanish when she tried to command. Anne sat alone in her Windsor room and opened a note once used by her late mother. She traced one sentence about duty standing before rank, and her anger softened into sadness. Queen Elizabeth II had trusted discipline to hold the family together. Her daughter feared that trust was being tested. Camilla removed her reading glasses and told Charles that she had been challenged like a guest in her own household. The king heard her voice tighten when she asked whether her title possessed any meaning. He understood Anne's command of protocol, yet he also knew that overruling his wife would weaken her standing. Supporting one woman seemed certain to wound the other. William entered the dispute with unease. The Prince of Wales, the title held by the heir to the throne, studied both plans and learned through a household briefing that Camilla's office had requested ceremonial control months earlier. Anne had delayed the proposal, arguing that wishes were being confused with constitutional order, the system governing royal authority. Charles asked his sister whether she could accept one revised procession. Anne met his eyes and answered that the issue was no longer where she walked. It was whether rules could be rewritten to protect someone's feelings. The king said nothing. William noticed an amendment attached to Camilla's plan. The future king read it twice and realized the disputed change had begun during a ceremony the palace had kept quiet. That moment had seemed harmless. In truth, it was where the struggle began, and where neither woman had stepped back. Months before the Windsor confrontation, a smaller ceremony had exposed the fault line now splitting the royal household. There had been no public argument, no dramatic announcement, and no official reprimand. Only one altered entrance, one quiet correction, and one expression that witnesses never forgot. What appeared to be a brief confusion over precedence became the trigger for everything that followed, because Camilla felt publicly diminished, and Anne believed a dangerous boundary had been tested. Camilla had chosen a military commemoration at St. George's Chapel to press the issue. The chapel, a royal church inside Windsor Castle, hosts ceremonies tied to the crown and service. Before the entrance, she instructed an equerry, an officer who assists senior royals during official duties, to place her ahead of Princess Anne in a segment arranged by service role rather than marital rank. Anne noticed the change minutes before the procession began. The Princess Royal checked the approved order, called the equerry back, and restored the original sequence. She believed she had prevented confusion before guests and military representatives. Camilla stood nearby and saw every word exchanged. The correction cut deeply. The Queen Consort stepped aside while staff rearranged the line, keeping her face composed, even as her hand tightened around her gloves. The procession moved forward without her amendment. To Anne, the danger had passed. To Camilla, the humiliation had only begun. Edward approached his sister after the ceremony and warned that the Queen had taken the correction personally. The Duke of Edinburgh, a title held by a senior member of the family who supports the monarch, understood how quickly private resentment could infect public duty. Anne replied that protocol could not be changed simply to spare discomfort. Edward heard the certainty in her voice and realized neither woman would forget. Camilla found Anne later in a reception room and waited until the aide had left. She asked whether the princess intended to challenge every instruction issued by her household. Anne answered that she would challenge any order that contradicted an approved plan, no matter where it came from. The Queen then said the system would eventually have to accept that the reign had changed. Anne slowly set down her teacup. She told Camilla that reigns changed, but discipline did not. The monarch's wife left without another word, and closed the door hard enough to silence the conversation outside. Sophie found Anne alone later. The trusted confidant watched her fold the ceremony program in half, and admit that a disagreement had become a test of limits. Windsor would give Camilla another chance to force that test, and this time, she would make certain the instruction could not be quietly undone. The decisive confrontation did not happen before cameras or gathered guests. It unfolded behind a closed drawing room door, with no aides, secretaries, or ceremonial officials to soften the exchange. Camilla entered expecting Anne to accept the revised order before the state reception. The Princess Royal entered determined to reverse it. Within minutes, years of restrained resentment erupted into the most personal argument either woman had allowed herself to voice. And Charles was waiting only one corridor away. Charles arranged the meeting because he feared a family dispute was becoming an institutional crisis. The king hoped speaking alone would force both women to listen. A state reception, a formal royal event held for national or foreign guests, could not begin under two competing chains of command. Camilla arrived carrying the amended procession order. The Queen Consort placed it on the table. Anne entered with the protocol book, the official guide explaining ceremonial rules, marked at sections covering precedence, military service, and royal duty. Camilla accused Anne of acting as though she alone had inherited Queen Elizabeth II's authority. She said tradition had become a shield used to resist change. The monarch's wife insisted that her household could not remain powerful in title but powerless in practice. Anne's composure broke. The Princess Royal struck the protocol book against the table and said Camilla was confusing closeness to the sovereign with ownership of the crown. Her voice rose, and the words carried through the closed door. Camilla stood. She told Anne she would no longer accept correction from someone who refused to recognize her position. The princess stepped closer and answered that titles earned respect only when their holders respected the institution beneath them. Neither woman moved back. Charles dismissed the aide waiting beside him and remained alone in the corridor. The king heard his wife invoke his authority. Then he heard his sister insist that he had never approved the alteration. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Camilla disclosed the source of her confidence through a private conversation she had held with Charles weeks earlier. She said he had promised her household broader control over state occasions. Anne immediately demanded that he enter and confirm the promise. Charles opened the door and froze. He looked from Camilla's flushed face to Anne's rigid posture. His hesitation exposed everything. The king admitted that he had encouraged his wife to take a stronger role, but he had never authorized her to override the established order. That admission should have ended the confrontation. Instead, it revealed the weakness beneath it. Camilla had acted on encouragement, Anne had acted on rules, and Charles had allowed both to believe they were right. The monarchy now faced a choice with no painless outcome. If Charles supported Camilla, he risked appearing to bend ancient protocol around personal loyalty. If he supported Anne, he would publicly diminish the woman he had spent years establishing beside him. Yet the final decision did not belong to emotion alone. Documents, advisors, precedent, and the future king all began closing around the dispute, transforming a family quarrel into a judgment on royal power itself. Charles ordered a review before another instruction left the palace. The king directed the Lord Chamberlain's office, the department managing royal ceremonies and household arrangements, to compare Camilla's plan with approved rules. Until the review ended, neither procession order would be final. William entered the crisis as more than a son. The Prince of Wales, the title held by the direct heir to the throne, was asked to judge how the decision could shape royal authority. He saw the danger. If private households could rewrite shared protocol, the monarchy might create competing centers of command. Charles sat alone with both versions before him. He removed his glasses and admitted to William that his effort to reassure Camilla had caused the crisis. The monarch had offered emotional support without defining its limits, and now his wife believed encouragement carried the force of command. William chose honesty over comfort. The future king told his father that protecting Camilla from embarrassment could not justify weakening Anne's responsibility. His voice remained measured, but Charles heard the criticism beneath every word. The king knew his silence had allowed affection to enter a space where clarity should have ruled. An advisor then produced a forgotten memorandum approved during Queen Elizabeth II's reign. The document, a written record setting out an official position, assigned Anne an ongoing consultative role in ceremonies involving military precedents and working royals. It did not grant her absolute control, but it confirmed that her authority had never been imagined. The review delivered its verdict. Camilla could propose changes affecting her household, but she could not independently reorder people serving in formal roles. Charles signed the finding with a fountain pen, then left it resting across the page. William watched his father's hand remain still as the king whispered that the decision would feel like betrayal to his wife. Anne showed no triumph when informed. The Princess Royal asked only whether the original order would return, and whether staff had been protected. Charles approved both. Then he ordered his sister to meet Camilla before the reception, because the Queen Consort had reacted in a way no one expected. The battle was settled on paper, but inside her private rooms, defeat was turning into withdrawal. Camilla did not shout when Charles delivered the decision. She did not argue, threaten, or demand another review. Instead, she read the ruling twice, placed it carefully on the table, and announced that she would not attend the Windsor reception. The withdrawal stunned the palace. What had begun as a struggle over ceremonial authority now threatened to produce an empty place beside the king, and a public absence that would expose the conflict to the world. Camilla summoned her private secretary and suspended every preparation connected to the event. The Queen Consort canceled her dress fitting, briefing session, and reception schedule within an hour. A Windsor reception is a formal royal gathering held for national or foreign guests, and her absence would be impossible to dismiss as a minor change. Charles understood the danger immediately. The king knew newspapers would question why his wife had vanished from such an important occasion. Yet if he reversed the ruling simply to bring her back, the formal review would become meaningless, and Anne's authority would appear negotiable whenever emotion entered the room. Camilla sat alone after her secretary left. She removed the reception program from its envelope and stared at the line placing her beside Charles. The anger slowly drained from her face, leaving something more painful. She had fought to make her position real, and now that fight had left her feeling more excluded than before. Sophie carried the news to Anne in a private conversation. The trusted confidant watched the Princess Royal's expression change as she explained that Camilla had withdrawn completely. Anne had defended procedure. not tried to drive the monarch's wife away. For the first time, she saw the personal damage created by a victory she had never wanted to celebrate. Staff began dividing in silence. Members of Camilla's household believed the ruling proved Anne still held greater influence. Long-serving ceremonial officials suspected the withdrawal was pressure designed to force Charles into reversing course. Anne proposed a compromise. The princess suggested preserving the approved procession while allowing Camilla to receive the principal foreign guest inside the hall. The role would protect her dignity without changing the disputed order. Charles carried the offer himself. Camilla listened, pushed the program away, and asked whether Anne's approval would now be required every time she entered a royal room. The king replied that no one questioned her place beside him. She answered that everyone honored her position until she tried to exercise it. Before Charles could respond, Anne arrived and asked to speak with Camilla alone. For the first time, no advisor, title, or protocol book would stand between them. What followed would decide whether humiliation became painful repair. Anne entered Camilla's sitting room without documents, medals, or prepared arguments. Camilla remained seated, uncertain whether the visit represented another correction or a final warning. There were no officials to define their positions, and no king to absorb the consequences. For several moments, neither woman spoke. Then the Princess Royal acknowledged something she had refused to admit throughout the conflict. She understood why Camilla believed every challenge carried the echo of her difficult past. Anne asked the secretaries to remain outside and requested that Charles stay away. She wanted no royal office speaking through either woman. A royal household is the team of staff supporting a senior member of the family, but this meeting would belong only to two people, carrying years of mistrust. Anne stated her limit plainly. The princess would not surrender authority over military and service roles, because confusion in those areas could damage the crown's discipline. Camilla answered that she could not hold the queen's position, while every decision appeared to require approval from relatives. Anne admitted that her correction at St. George's Chapel had been cold. She had protected the approved order, yet she had ignored the humiliation Camilla felt before the staff. The princess said duty had sharpened her voice until it sounded like contempt. Camilla answered with honesty of her own. The Queen Consort admitted through that private conversation that she had chosen the Windsor reception to force the question of authority. She wanted one clear demonstration that her position carried power, and she had pushed aside the confusion it might cause. Anne sat opposite her and moved the unsigned withdrawal note between them. She warned that refusing to attend would wound Charles more deeply than either woman intended. The king had created the uncertainty, but he would also suffer most from their refusal to resolve it. Camilla did not touch the paper. She asked whether Anne truly accepted her as queen or merely tolerated her for Charles's sake. The question stripped away protocol, rank, and every safe excuse. Anne held her gaze. The princess replied that acceptance did not mean obedience, but Camilla's place beside the monarch was real and would be defended. She added that defending the queen sometimes meant stopping her office from making a damaging mistake. Camilla folded the withdrawal note and tore it once down the middle. She agreed to attend under the restored order and accept Anne's receiving role. Their truce saved the reception, but it came too late to save the secret. The delayed program had already drawn attention, and one leaked detail was about to turn private pain into public judgment across Britain before either woman could prepare for it. By the morning of the Windsor reception, the dispute had escaped the palace. The public did not receive the full story, but it received enough: a delayed ceremonial program, conflicting household instructions, and whispers of an extraordinary confrontation between the Queen Consort and the Princess Royal. Then one newspaper published a front page that transformed the disagreement into a national spectacle. The image showed Anne walking ahead with Camilla watching from behind, and the headline declared a royal power struggle. A revised procession order had reached a national newspaper overnight. The document showed that two versions had circulated inside Windsor, turning a private dispute into evidence of divided command. A procession order is the approved sequence in which royal figures enter and move through a ceremony, and changing it can signal who holds practical authority. Buckingham Palace answered with a brief statement calling the changes routine ceremonial coordination. The palace, the central office speaking for the monarch and senior royals, avoided confirming the confrontation. Its careful wording protected the family for hours, but the silence surrounding the details only deepened suspicion. Charles unfolded the front page at breakfast and stared at the words "Anne holds the line." The king lowered the paper and asked why every private disagreement became a judgment on his marriage. William heard the frustration in his father's voice and understood that the reception had become more than ceremony. Camilla faced the consequences upon arriving at Windsor. The Queen Consort heard supportive cheers mixed with shouted questions about Anne, yet she continued without responding. Her smile tightened, but she refused to let public curiosity turn private pain into spectacle. A crowd gathered outside the Henry V Gate, an entrance used by visitors approaching Windsor Castle. People raised newspapers above the barriers, while a broadcaster described the reception as a carefully staged display of unity after an unmistakable clash within the royal household. Every movement now carried meaning. Commentators watched whether Anne would bow, whether Camilla would acknowledge her, and which woman would move first. The princess followed the approved service order. Inside, the queen received the principal guest through the enhanced roll agreed during their private truce. Camilla turned toward Anne as the guests moved onward and gave a deliberate nod. The princess answered with the smallest smile. Charles saw it. William saw it. Neither woman had won through humiliation. The reception succeeded, but one question remained. The public display had restored calm, yet only a formal reordering of authority could prevent the same wound from opening again inside the crown. The final verdict would come quietly, through a decision defining where Anne's duty ended and where Camilla's authority could finally begin securely. The conflict ended not with banishment, humiliation, or a public surrender, but with a recognition neither woman could have reached without first pushing the monarchy toward rupture. Anne had proved that royal protocol could not be rewritten through personal influence. Camilla had proved that the Queen's office could not remain ceremonial in name while powerless in practice. Their confrontation forced Charles to define what he had left dangerously uncertain, and the final settlement changed how authority would operate around the crown. Charles approved a division of responsibility. The king confirmed that the Lord Chamberlain's office, the department overseeing ceremonies, would retain final control over state protocol. Anne would continue advising on military service and precedence, meaning the approved order in which royals take part in formal events. Camilla received real authority. The Queen Consort gained control over hospitality, guest reception, and ceremonies connected to her household, provided every change passed through the central office. Her power no longer depended on private reassurance from Charles. It now rested on written boundaries. Anne read the final framework without triumph. The Princess Royal understood that tradition had not been weakened. It had been protected because every role now had limits. Camilla reached the same conclusion. She no longer needed to defeat Anne to prove that her position mattered. The final meeting carried no ceremony. Charles placed the approved document between them and admitted that affection, family loyalty, and royal command had become dangerously blurred. The monarch accepted that his failure to define authority had pushed both women into a contest neither should have faced. Anne signed first and passed the pen across the table. Camilla signed beneath her name without hesitation. The queen returned the pen, and the silence between them felt different. It was no longer filled with challenge. It carried recognition. William watched the settlement take shape and understood its deeper lesson. The Prince of Wales saw that the monarchy had survived, not because conflict was hidden, but because duty restrained emotion. The future king would carry that truth into his own reign. Anne's loss of control had not destroyed her reputation. It exposed how fiercely she feared the erosion of standards entrusted to her. Camilla's challenge had not made her an enemy of tradition. It revealed her determination to inhabit a role that had long felt conditional. Anne held the door as the meeting ended. Camilla paused, thanked her, and walked through. No embrace followed. None was needed. Protocol had survived, authority had been clarified, and pride had finally given way to duty. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.